Good morning, everyone. This is my second try to make this video. I am early to the master classes again, so time to make a video, right? My phone, I haven't been deleting the old videos, so my phone actually ran out of space, ran out of memory. What we're talking about this morning, and I hope I don't get too confused, because like when I do these videos, the car videos, just flowing, right? And if I've already done the video, how do I differentiate between what I said in the previous video that got scrapped and what I'm talking about now? So I'm gonna try to push the reset button. I hope I end up remembering everything, or not, more accurately, not remembering anything, and just truly starting over. Okay, here we go. The subject today is competition strategy for this year's Texas Allstate music for trumpet. And here's the problem. Look at what the main difference is between this year and all the previous years. What's the biggest difference? And just to save time, because this time I am short of time because it took so long to do the other video that got scrapped, I'm just going to tell you, it's the length of the etudes. All 3 etudes this year are half of a page long. In all my years working with Allstate students, and then back into the 80s when I was trying out for Allstate, I don't think we've ever had so little material to work on for Allstate. Now that's, most of you might be thinking that's a good thing, and in a way it is sort of a good thing, right? It's a good thing because, you know, a lot of you might even have the etudes finished working them up now. Which brings me to the other point. Not only are the etudes short, so there's so little material to work on, they're also pretty easy. With one exception, we'll talk about that exception at the end of the video. And if you have issues with that exception, then this is something that you need to address, and there's a big reason why you need to address it. But let's first talk about the strategy first, okay? What do you do? So yeah, you look at it, that it's good news, right? Oh, the etudes are easy this year. Is that really good news? Think about it from the judge's perspective. If everyone can play the music, how is the judge supposed to differentiate between the good players and the bad players? Of course, now we all know that it's not just that you can play the notes and the rhythms, right? We all know that. We all know that you have to have a good sound, you have to have phrasing, you have to have style, right? But what happens, and by the way, what I'm talking about doesn't apply to region, okay? Because region, I don't think anything changes for region, because most of the regions, you have more chairs than you have ambitious people, ambitious students, right? So almost always the people at the bottom of the lower chairs in region are almost always like, you know, they were lucky to make region, that kind of thing, right? I don't know. There might be some regions that are more competitive than that, but I think for the most part, there's more chairs than there are ambitious students. So what I'm saying here doesn't apply to region, but at the Allstate level, think about it. You have short, easy etudes. And yes, it's true that if you're judging region, you can tell by the sound, you can tell by the phrasing, you can tell by the style, which players are better than the students that don't have those things. But now we're talking about Allstate. These guys have already made region. most of them are going to have good sounds. Most of them are going to have phrasing and stuff like that. How do you differentiate as a judge one player from the other? Are you going to say, oh, at that point, it's not truly about sound. It is kind of. It has to be about sound. Yes, you're right. But we don't all agree about what the right sound is. We don't all agree about what correct style is. We don't all agree about how things should be phrased. So this year, more than ever, and the whole time I've been doing this year more than ever, making Allstate is like playing the lottery. Let that sink in. This year, making Allstate is more than ever like playing the lottery. Okay, why is that? Because we don't know who the judges are going to be, right? We don't know what style they're looking for. We can't possibly know how they would, what phrasing they would prefer, right? There's no way we can know that stuff. And so what it comes down to is the people who make the highest chairs are the ones that please the right judges, right? So I can tell you this, that I believe that you're also going to see more than ever differentiation in this. Usually what happens when you're judging Allstate, right, is that the 5 judges agree about the top 2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5 students. The first player, the second player, the third player, the fourth player, those they will agree on. Lower down in the ranking, it's a big, it's amorphous, it's nebulous, the chair arrangement. Okay, and I have a theory about that, about why that happens. And it's also true that the people at the very bottom, the judges almost always agree with that too. I think this year though, because the music is so easy, I think you're going to see more differentiation between those top 3 or 4 players. I think you're going to see more judges disagreeing about who the top players are. Because you're forcing, by having music that's so easy and so short. See what happens when you have short etudes. The quality of the playing goes up. When that sounds like, okay, well that's great, right? Because the students are going to get this wonderful opportunity to play high quality music. So looking at it from the student's perspective, this is great. This is great, right? You're going to have a much better musical experience. But for those of you who are truly competitive, this is not a good picture. Okay? How do you stand out when everybody can play the music? How do you stand out when everybody has had enough time to learn the music and now work on things like expression? Now, I don't believe in working it that way, but everybody else does. I believe you should be musical from the beginning. That's the video I did yesterday. But everybody else does. And now, because the etudes are so short, the students are going to have time to work on their sound. The students are going to have time to work on their phrasing and dynamics and stuff like that. And that seems like a good thing. But it's not going to help the judges decide who's the best player in the room. Okay? So, knowing that, what should the strategy be for when you audition? The more similar everyone becomes, the more important it is to focus on the general stuff and not the specific, okay? You want to, so, because it does come down to, since everyone's going to be able to play the notes, everyone's going to be able to play the rhythms, it does come down to sound. You better have an awesome sound, okay? That's the most important thing this year. Whatever and you know what? Don't take your own word for it. Find a teacher or somebody and ask them, how's my sound? Is it good enough to make Allstate? And if it's not, do something about it. If you're truly ambitious and you want to make Allstate, you're not going to make Allstate this year if you don't have a great sound. I promise you that. It's just not going to happen. Okay? So stuff like that, sound, vibrato, style, phrasing, all the musical stuff, that has to be your strategy. Of course, you need to learn the music too, but there's none of it to learn. There's so little of it to learn. Okay? And by the way, the stuff I said in yesterday's video about being musical all the time from the very beginning when you're practicing the music, that's more important now than ever. That's more important now than ever. Now let's talk about that one exception. See, the way, I have a unique perspective on this because I've written so many of those jazz etudes, right? When I write the jazz etudes, my mind is in this place where I'm thinking, what can I do to help the judges? That's how I write the etudes. What can I do to help the judges figure out who the better players are? So I put stuff in the etudes. It's sort of like an obstacle course. I create this obstacle course for the students, and the judges can see each one of those obstacles. Did they get through this one? Did they get through that one? How did they do on this one? Okay? And I believe this helps the judges differentiate the different players. Okay? So, this year, the only thing like that in the classical etudes is the range. And here's why this is so important this year. Because the way the etudes are, you've got these big singing high notes. And they're not high. Here's the problem, is that a lot of high school students max out at about G. So I'm not saying that that's a high note, okay? But if your range only goes up to G, and you have a 2, 3, 4 beats of an A or a B flat, that's supposed to sing out, it's not going to sound very good. And remember what we just said, sound is everything this year. Sound is more important this year than it's ever been. And it's always important, more important now than ever. Okay? And if your range is only up to G, you're not going to have a good sound on those higher notes. So that's the exception. That's the only thing that's differentiating. And maybe, I don't know who picks the etudes, and I don't know what their criteria is. But that's the only differentiation in the music that I see. is that range thing. And they may not have intended to make it about range, but if they didn't, they inadvertently made it all about range, which to me, that's disappointing, right? Last thing I want to do with my students. Okay, and to be honest, I don't have any high school students right now that are limited to G right now. Some of them think they are, right? But no, I don't have it. Not that I can think of right now. So this doesn't really apply to my students, I think. But I do master classes and stuff like that, and how many of the students max out at F and G? And that's a problem this year. And like I said, the last thing I want to do during this time of the year is help people with their range. And let me be clear about that too. It's not that I don't like working on range. That's part of what we do. And it's not, you see what I mean? So what am I saying? This is not the right time to be working on range. The right time to work on range was 3 months ago. Now, you're forced to be working on range during a time when there's no way to get your range to develop without inviting risk. I won't go into the details of that, but yes, during this time of the year, if you're increasing your range, and I'm talking specific, I have a student that's a student at HSPVA. That's different for them. She's ready to go to the master level. Those of you who know my books and my system, the master level is E above high C. She's ready to make that next jump to increase her range to that level. And it's not a big deal for her because she doesn't have marching band camp, right? Because she's at HSPVA, they don't do marching band there. Okay, for the rest of you, this is not the time to be working on your range. Because if you work on your range now during marching band camp, most likely you're going to do something wrong, and that whatever it is that you're going to do wrong could have long-lasting effects on your playing. It would almost be better if you don't have a range past G. It would almost be better for you this year to just say, oh, I don't want to do region or whatever, and focus on something else right now instead of region. Focus on something else besides state, because the damage you could do to the... Now, that said, if you're not someone that wants to play for the rest of your life, let's say you're a senior this year, and you have no intention of playing next year in college, you just want to make Allstate this year because it's your last year and you want to have some great experience before you go out. And I don't have a problem with that, right? I don't think everybody who can play should play. I've never been one of those. I think you should play if you want to play. If you don't want to play, it's fine to put it aside for a while. So let's say you're one of those, you're a high school senior, and you want to make Allstate real bad this year, and you don't have any plans of playing in college or professionally or anything like that, then go ahead and work on your range so that you can have a better sound on those notes. So that you get up to those high notes and you sing it out and sound beautiful on those high notes. I keep saying high notes, they're not high. But for some of you, they are high, right? What's high is relative to everybody, right? So, but other than that, if your range right now maxes out at F or G at the top of the staff, and you have marching band right now, I would say just learn the parts. Well, you know what I told the students yesterday? Take that stuff down an octave. This is not the time to be working on range. That's how I see it. I know maybe a lot of people disagree with me. I have far, far too much experience with people who have messed themselves up trying to pursue range in a careless manner. The damage that's done is almost unfixable. There's a word for that, but I'm not pulling it out of my head. But there's irreparable. That's the word I was looking for. The damage that's done when you work on range in a careless manner, the damage that's done is almost always irreparable. So yes, that's the one exception that we're talking about. That's the one exception. This year's etudes do differentiate on a range. Now, why are they different from last year? Because the etudes almost always have A's and B flats in them. Sometimes high C's. Why is this different? Well, because this year those notes are prominent. They're big, important notes of the phrase. In previous years, you might have had a range up to F or G. Maybe you missed the high notes, but it wasn't that big of a deal. This year, those notes are the meat and potatoes of the etude. And if you can't play those notes, yeah, so that's the only differentiation. So those of you who can already play up to high C, good for you. This is your year. You might make Allstate this year. Just make sure you got a great sound. But that's what I have for you. I got to get in there. But let me recapitulate. What the strategy should be is you emphasize the general stuff. Make these etudes as beautiful as possible. Make them sing. Phrasing, dynamics, style, vibrato, all of that stuff. Style, I already said style. Phrasing, dynamics, style. Anyway, you get it. Okay? So I got to get in there. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to ask down below. Other than that, God bless you. We will see you on the next one. Bye.